All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Senator Nick Miller. I represent parts of Lehigh and Northampton counties. Today's hearing, we're going to examine data centers and what we need to consider as they proliferate across the Commonwealth and how they impact our communities and our consumers. So I want to thank my colleagues, my co-host, Senator Flynn, as well as Senator Malone and Hughes from Philadelphia. We've got some of our representatives here as well, Mullins and a number of others that are going to be joining us. For some opening remarks, I'm going to pass over to Senator Flynn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank Senator Miller for bringing us together today and thank my colleagues from both the House and Senate who are here with us. I also want to thank our testifiers and everyone from the public who took time to follow this important discussion. Our focus today is on data centers, but the core of this conversation is about how Pennsylvania manages growth and prepares for the future. Data centers play an enormous role in the digital world we rely on every day. From healthcare to financial transactions to how we stay connected online. At the same time, they raise serious questions. These facilities use significant amounts of electricity and water, and they can affect local infrastructure. They bring long-term questions about land use, environmental impacts, and community costs. But there are also clear opportunities. Data centers can attract major private investment, generate new tax revenue, and strengthen the digital infrastructure that supports our economy. For Pennsylvania, the challenge is making sure the benefits are real and shared fairly, while the costs and risks are managed responsibly. I want to acknowledge the questions we received from the public ahead of today's hearing. Many residents raised concerns about water supplies, electricity rates, and the environmental impact of sitting facilities in forests and wetlands. Others question whether these projects would provide real jobs or whether communities are left to shoulder their costs. These are not small concerns, and they deserve to be part of this conversation. That is why today's hearing matters. Our responsibility is to hear from experts, gather facts, and examine both the opportunities and the risks before decisions are made. Whatever direction we take, it must align with Pennsylvania's long-term goals, economic, environmental, and community alike. I look forward to hearing from today's testifiers and continuing this important dialogue about what makes sense for Pennsylvania's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Flynn. So it's a priority for our caucus that as new innovations and economic opportunities arise in the Commonwealth, that we take into consideration the impact that they have on surrounding neighborhoods, local economies, and the environment. I want to kind of lay out today's structure. We have the first panel. The chairman of the PUC, DeFrank, will be joining us to kick us off. We've got a second panel for community impacts. Third is effective utilities in the grid. And then last, the economic considerations. So with that, I will kick it off to our chairman of the PUC, Chairman DeFrank, who is joining us on Zoom.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Miller and members of the Senate Democratic Policy Committee. My name is Steve DeFrank, and I'm the chairman of the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in front of the committee today on this important topic of data centers. In your invitation to the commission for this hearing, you elaborated on your intent to examine the opportunities and impacts on Pennsylvania communities arising from the construction of data centers here in the Commonwealth. I applaud you for leading this discussion. As members of the committee are well aware, data center proliferation is a central topic of interest among policymakers here in the Commonwealth and nationwide. The Commission has placed a targeted focus on this newly evolving commercial revolution, and we are glad to share our perspective on these issues along with summarizing actions taken at the PUC. Data center build-out, along with the policy conversations gravitating around it, have expanded significantly and quickly. The challenges and opportunities now being discussed in a myriad of venues, such as this hearing today, were barely even a topic of conversations just 2 years ago. Now we find ourselves weighing the variables and striving to tackle these challenges in a way that maximizes the huge opportunities presented. Pennsylvania has a long and proud history of energy, industrial, and technological innovation. From the first commercial oil well in Titusville, to the steel mills of Bethlehem, to the Westinghouse labs in Pittsburgh, to natural gas extraction and shale formations in the southwest and northeast regions of the state. Once again, Pennsylvania is uniquely situated to cultivate the potential benefits from a breakthrough in data center development. The Commonwealth is a major energy exporter with an abundance of excess electric generation capacity, including carbon-free energy from one of the nation's largest nuclear fleets. We have top-flight research universities and a highly educated workforce. Pennsylvania is centrally located, close to the major population centers of the Northeast and to existing data hubs of Northern Virginia, New York, and Columbus, Ohio. Pennsylvania is also aggressively building out its communication systems, recently announcing an $800 million investment in broadband deployment using funds from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And finally, the Commonwealth has an attractive tax climate for data centers. I highlighted the Commonwealth's unique position in my official testimony submitted at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC's technical conference held last November, related to data centers and their interconnection to the electricity grid. At that conference, I also noted the consequences of poorly planned economic development. Many Pennsylvanians know all too well the costs of poorly planned development. While our rich industrial heritage has contributed to our economic prosperity, we have left future generations to deal with the impact of poor or no planning. This is why we must make certain that the mistakes of our past are not repeated in the present to leave problems for the future. Now, at the beginning of this new wave of technological growth, is the time to make sure things are well planned and done right. To that end, on April 14th, 2025, the Commission hosted an en banc hearing concerning interconnection and tariffs for large load customers. At that hearing, the Commission heard testimony from 10 participants representing electric utilities, data centers, and advocates. We focused the conversation on the impact of data center interconnection onto the electric grid, as well as what rules and procedures should be in place to effectively interconnect these facilities while protecting existing customers from undue risk or stranded costs. The Commission also received file comments from over 40 interested parties. We've carefully considered this input and are currently working on a proposed model tariff aimed to address characteristics such as appropriate megawatt size for tariff designations, financial security requirements, minimum contract terms, early termination fees, maximum interconnection studies times, load ramping, and best practices from other jurisdictions. It is my goal to have this proposal out for comment in the near future. As we all know, the electric demand from these data centers is unprecedented. Historically, growth in electricity demand was linear, growing in a range from 1% to 3% per year. Interconnection of data center customers is similar to creating a brand new city, but placing its demand on a relatively small geographic footprint. Herein lies the potential benefit of these accounts. For instance, the city of Pittsburgh has approximately 5,000 miles of circuits, 180,000 meters, 100,000 poles, 150 substations, and 20,000 transformers. The reason I talk about the city of Pittsburgh because the current data center being proposed by Amazon at the Susquehanna Generating Facility at the current filing before FERC is for 480 megawatts. The city of Pittsburgh's load is 300 megawatts. So when you look at that infrastructure that's needed to serve the city of Pittsburgh and those 300 megawatts, you can serve more load with less infrastructure. A typical data center would have less than a few miles of circuits, 1 meter, a handful of poles, a substation, and a few transformers. As I said, this is significantly less infrastructure than a city, but the account is consuming a similar amount of electricity. The disparity in volume versus fixed cost offers the potential to reduce rates, particularly for transmission, among all ratepayers. In essence, data centers provide an opportunity to significantly increase the number of watts while minimally increasing the fixed costs, thereby spreading the fixed cost among a much larger volume of load and reducing the per unit cost of service for the utility. However, this will only be realized if prudent interconnection rules and policies are established and followed. The Commission is firmly committed to seeing this through. Finally, the impact of data centers on resource adequacy of the electric grid is top of mind. While the Commission does not regulate generation nor administer electric resource planning, we still have direct responsibility to foster reliable electric distribution service at affordable rates. To that end, the Commission hosted a Resource Adequacy Technical Conference on November 25th, 2024, to hear perspectives of electric utilities, generators, PJM advocates, and legislators on this important issue. Following the conference, the Commission issued the en banc I discussed earlier, and also has worked with electric distribution companies to reform and refine their load projections. The Commission also maintains a strong advocacy voice for the Commonwealth in other venues. I serve as the Commission's board member of the Organization of PJM States, or OPSI. Whether through OPSI or individually as the Commission, the PUC monitors and participates in matters at PJM Interconnection, the operator of PJM's electric grid, and in proceedings of FERC. Recently, PJM issued a critical issue fast path proposal to address the onrush of demand created by data centers and its impact on reliability and resource adequacy. The Commission and OPSI are currently reviewing the proposal and plan to actively engage in the deliberation process to ensure the viewpoints of the states are considered. Our goal is to ensure that grid reliability is maintained, and we will continue to advocate for effective market rules to ensure that. These are extraordinary times in the energy sector. The decisions we make in the next 5 to 7 years will impact us for the next 70 years. I'm confident with prudent planning, new data centers can be integrated into the electric grid in a manner that benefits all utility customers, local municipalities, and the Commonwealth. I thank the committee for the invitation to participate today, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to open this up with just a quick question on the balance. One of my first hearings as chairman of the policy hearing for the Senate Democrats was about energy affordability and resource adequacy. How do we balance, and understanding the economic development and potential tax revenue that these centers would create, how do we balance protecting our consumers that have seen increases in energy costs? I represent parts of the PPL service area, and they've just saw double-digit increases to their energy bills. How do we balance that economic development opportunity with the impact to consumers?
So affordability comes top to mind to many regulators, and myself is no difference with that. The most important thing is we have to keep the lights on. We have to make sure that we have enough power to serve our needs. So that's first and foremost, and that's what led to our tech conference that we had last November. Coming out of that tech conference, as I said, was the en banc hearing to develop a model tariff. But we're also engaging in an RFP to look at what our load projections are and if we have enough supply. I do think that some of the projections that are out there are probably a bit inflated. When you look at some of the numbers out there, I'm not sure that they justify some of the projections that are out there. So, as I said in my testimony, when we restructured and when we removed generation under the PUC's regulation, we also gave up resource planning, and we put all of our resource planning eggs into the PJM basket. That's something that I think restructured states are now starting to look at and having a little more input and a little more review of some of the resource planning in their state. I think you got to remember that we go beyond Pennsylvania. I mean, we are in a regional grid. So what happens in Maryland, what happens in Ohio, what happens in New Jersey affects us in Pennsylvania. So that's one of the reasons why I think this is an opportunity. As I said, we're long on generation in Pennsylvania, meaning we have excess capacity. However, if we see these developments happening in other states, that's going to be Pennsylvania power shipped into those other states to serve those entities. So that's why I think that it's an opportunity, because of the size of this investment is keeping those investments in state. Now, your question, Senator, how do we keep this affordable? I think there's, again, we're in a restructured market. So our electric bills, there's two different sides of them. There's the generation component and there's the distribution component. The distribution side is what's regulated. The generation side is not, which means you could shop for your own electric supplier, or decide with the default supply of your electric company. When we look at those prices, and that's the increase you're talking about at the PJM marketplace, that's difficult to deal with because what that is a supply and demand paradigm. We're seeing increased demand with reduced supply. So that's why you're seeing those prices jump in that regard. The way we address that is, first off, we need more generation. There's no question about it. But I also talk about it above all the approach. Demand response. We need to reduce peak demand times. You are not going to be able to build yourself to meet peak demand. It becomes very expensive if you do that. We just reauthorized phase 5 of our Act 129 program. The way we meet system peaks is through the demand side. We can't build to that. Realize many of our costs, when we look at our costs, are driven by 20 or 25 hours a year, and sometimes it's over several years. So how we meet the needs in those small times of the year when the grid is most stressed is what drives costs for ratepayers. So that's on the generation side. On the distribution side, that's what we regulate at the PUC. And this increased load can actually drive down distribution rates because a distribution rate is nothing than a price per unit. So if you drastically increase your units and minimally increase your costs to serve those units, the price per unit will come down. So this increased load on the one side of the bill can bring it down. On the other side of the bill, though, it's raising it, and that's because of the demand supply issue.
Understood. Just one follow-up question, and then I'm going to open up to my colleagues. How about the environmental impact and the water consumption? Could you touch on what you're seeing or projecting on your end, or what you've seen? There's obviously a lot of stuff on social media, and I just wanted to see if you have any kind of expert insight into that.
So, water consumption is huge. It's mostly used for cooling, but data centers are large users, large consumers of water. I am not sure how much of that consumed as opposed to used. I think it's mostly used, not consumed, meaning that it would be put back. I think it's being used to cool. So temperature is an issue of that water, what it's being returned to the environment in. However, and your data center folks can probably answer that question a little better than I. But my understanding, it's used, not consumed.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'll pass it to Senator Malone for a question.
All right. Is that working? Okay. Got to be 100 miles away here. Yeah, I just wanted to go back really quick. What's the timeline to the proposed model tariff that you mentioned? Go ahead.
So we hope to have it out for comment by the end of September. So
Okay.
the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And then can you talk about the range of options that are being considered in that?
So I have not seen it. Staff is working on it. So one of the things that I've always espoused for is, again, making sure we're protecting our existing ratepayers from stranded costs. So how do you do that? You got to make sure the load's coming. As when we talk about development, I always talk about, this isn't a strip mall here. We're not talking about curb cuts and turning lanes. This is hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure required to serve these entities, mostly in transmission infrastructure. So we want to make sure that the ratepayer is insulated from that. One of the ideas I put out during the en banc hearing was what happens, because when we're dealing with data centers, it's all about speed and market, how quickly we can get connected and up and running. So if the end user is willing to do a lot of the infrastructure build out on their own dime at their own expense, we should espouse that. If we get people connected quicker and they're doing the build out, we're insulating the ratepayer then from potential stranded costs. So that's just one idea of how to insulate the ratepayer to make sure they're not paying for something that never comes to fruition. I grew up in southwestern Pennsylvania, Senator, and there are a ton of industrial parks, a ton of expensive fields, as I call them. They have tons of infrastructure in, and the businesses never came. And taxpayers paid for all that. We want to make sure we don't make that same mistake here.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. I've seen that in real estate in Arizona. Hundreds of never built out,
Yep.
but completely started projects. Thank you.
Very expensive fields, yes.
Representative Mullins, you have a question?
Oh, no, just whenever you're doing the round of introductions, I can defer until
Okay,
this
all right.
panel's done.
Any other questions for our chairman? I see Senator Williams. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair DeFrank. My question was PJM's auction that presumed data centers would be built in their territory that led to an increase in our electric bills. I know that utility bills are one of the biggest drivers that my constituents call. They call into my office and to United Way. Do data centers pay into consumer assistance programs that help consumers like our seniors better afford their utility bills?
So consumer assistance programs are done by the EDC. So the answer is, like always, Senator, maybe. Okay, maybe. If so, you can have two types of configurations for a data center. You can have one that's located in front of the meter and one that's located behind the meter. So if it's in front of the meter, that means the local electric company is serving that entity. Okay, it's in front of the meter. If it's behind the meter, that means that it's typically co-located. It's attached to a generator. So the facility, Amazon facility, originally proposed at Susquehanna was a co-location arrangement where they were grabbing power directly off of the generator and serving the data center. A few months ago, they recently announced a deal with PPL where much of that load will be coming in front of the meter. And PPL can better answer this question. But again, the EDC is who provides money for CAP, for customer assistance programs. Some of those rates, if the facility was in front of the meter, would be going to those. If it's behind the meter, though, it's not even attached to the EDC.
But if they're behind the meter, they're still affecting our increase in prices for the build out of.
Oh, they absolutely are.
So,
There's no question.
so I would argue that whether they're before or after is we should think about that in terms of what they're paying into consumer
Well, I
assistance.
think you'd have to re-regulate. We're a restructured state and we don't regulate generation. That's what the issue is. So I don't know that you can require a payment like that for an entity you don't regulate.
All right, thank you. Something for us to look into. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Any other questions for the chairman, representative?
Chairman DeFrank, Jim Haddock. In a recent PUC report that just came out for the year 2024, the state of Pennsylvania experienced the highest levels of power outages in the past 30 years. PPL was that services was at 1.7 million customers, and right here in the Northeast is our main supplier, led that list with 74 outages, and 60% of those were to vegetation, trees being down, but that left 40% to equipment failures, or about 30 incidences. This extra demand with this boom to our power grid, in particular PPL's operation here in the Northeast. I guess my question is, what effect do we think that this increased power, if these were to come to fruition, be on our power grid? How reliable is our system currently and going forward with the possible increased demand, especially with these record number of outages here in Northeast Pennsylvania and the whole state?
So, when you look at outages, it is either down trees or equipment failure. It's not from lack of supply. So that would be the first issue I would point out. It's not as though we haven't had enough supply. It has been equipment failure or trees. So that's why you've had the outages. Um, but that's what we're dealing with now, Representative, and that's the issues that we're trying to address now is to making sure we have enough adequate supply. And it's adequate supply when? Adequate supply when you have the most stress to the grid, or adequate supply when you have the least stress to the grid. And the other question is our data centers, can they be interrupted? So when we have those stress times on the grid, is a data center able to come offline and make sure homes are powered and not the data center? That was one of the things that we looked at on the en banc, and to going back to Senator Malone's question, that's something that our model tariff hopefully will be addressing is, can you be connected quicker if you're interrupted, if you're interruptible, if you're willing to come down? And it depends on the data center. I mean, when you look at some of our large data centers, so Google's or Amazon's, now Amazon will tell you they can't power down. Google will tell you they can. I think interconnecting data centers will hopefully allow you to bring a data center down at those stressful times of the grid. Also, with all of this development sparks innovation. And one of the things we're seeing now are software developers utilizing software to get the maximum out of a data center with the minimal amount of power used. The one thing I've always said is that while this is coming on, and because it's so proliferated, we're only going to become more efficient. We're not going to become less efficient. We're only going to become better. So that's the one point that I would point out, is that what a data center is using today in power, they will likely not be using 5 years from now. That data center is going to be more efficient because power is their number one cost. So they're going to any enterprise, private enterprise is going to try to control costs. So I think that's what's going to drive a lot of this is that. And then we have data centers that can't be interrupted. We're going to have to deal with those separately, though, particularly in those high stress times of the grid. No question about that. But again, we need new generation. We need increased generation. Then we have to maximize our infrastructure, whether it's transmission infrastructure or distribution infrastructure, to get the best bang for our buck. Look at it this way: the price of this commodity is increasing. Okay, so as that price increases, a project that may not have been economically feasible before, all of a sudden becomes feasible now because the price of the commodity is higher. So you're going to be seeing, as we're on the front end of these increased prices. As you're seeing these increased prices, you're going to see innovation come to respond to them.
You have a quick follow-up, and then we got to
Yeah.
let the chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting. You said twice that certain data centers cannot be powered down, Amazon being one of them. Why? Why can't they be compared to Google that can be?
I think it depends on, again, I'm not a data center person. I'm not representing them, but I think that it depends on what they're doing. I mean, we have data centers that are responsible for national security. I would assume that a data center that's responsible for national security probably can't be powered down. It depends what they're doing. If we're, I always say with Google, how long does a Google search take to come back? A half second, 3/4 of a second. Well, at times of stress on the grid, and Google's operating 6 data centers and they power down to 5 data centers or 4. Well, that Google search might take 4 seconds now. That's the trade-off we're doing to make sure lights stay on for residents.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman. I know you have to run. I appreciate you joining us via Zoom this afternoon. With that, and I know we jumped right into it, I want to allow our representatives to do some intros as well. Representative Mullins, you want to kick us off with some intros, and we'll go down the row here.
Thanks so much, Chairman Miller and Senator Flynn and all of my colleagues in the Senate and House for making it here today and for our opportunity to make this a bicameral opportunity. I'm Kyle Mullins. I'm a state representative from the 112th District that runs from Dunmore up to the Carbondale area, and in that footprint are where a number of data center sites have been proposed. So we've heard of the need for data centers to fuel our modern world, and I have also heard deep and repeated concerns and lingering questions from area residents, and family, and friends, many of which I share. That there are places for these centers and that there are places these centers simply don't belong. We must acknowledge the demands of our technological advancements that we are all contributing to, but we also must protect our communities. State law must include strict guidelines for the responsible placement and operation of data centers. There must be protections in place for our water supply and our power grid capacity. We must ensure that it is the hands of local labor that are engaged for these projects if they are approved. These centers should be required to adopt best practices when it comes to noise mitigation and water use. And there must be protections in place to ensure that no data center costs fall on electricity customers. A bill that was introduced by the House Democrats earlier this afternoon, House Bill 1834. So for these reasons, that's why I'm very proud to be working with these representatives in the House Democratic Caucus and the State Senate on a package of bills to accomplish these things and more. And I hope today's testimony can help guide that work, and that you'll forgive me as I leave for another conflict. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. Any other intros? Bridget?
Okay, technology. Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and I'm very grateful for Senator Miller and Senator Flynn for hosting this. AI centers certainly deserve this kind of attention and thoughtfulness and the community's involvement. The agenda here tonight, in terms of the community impact, the effects on utilities and the grid, the economic considerations, we couldn't address these things more. Certainly, I'm always, as the nurse here, I'm always certainly committed to the safeguarding both the health of our communities and the integrity of our environment. So I'm grateful for these experts who are here to testify this evening, and I look forward to having a thoughtful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
State Representative Jim Haddock, serving the 118th District with serving both Luzerne and Lackawanna County, parts thereof. Glad for the policy of the Senate hearing coming in today. Thank you, Chairman Miller, and certainly thank you, Senator Flynn, for hosting this. Education's always a good thing for all of us. Thank you.
Agreed. Any other intros? Representative Madden?
Thank you, Chairman Miller, Senator Flynn, for having this hearing. I'm Maureen Madden. I represent the 115th Legislative District in Monroe County in the Poconos. So whatever you all are doing in Lackawanna County, we are certainly interested as your neighbors in Monroe, and I'm just here to learn. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you very much, Senator Miller and Senator Flynn, for putting all this together. This is vital information. I know that it's on the minds of everyone. And those of us that are involved in government, we're always looking for a balance between cost and the kind of needs that everyone is required, especially when we look at utilities and we look at healthcare. Those are life and death things. We must have that. And as a result, we got to try to find the right pathway. I represent the 121st District, which is the Wilkes-Barre area. And once again, thank everyone for coming out. Thank you, Senator Flynn. Thank you, Senator Miller.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Hughes?
Let me thank my colleagues, Senator Miller and Senator Flynn, for convening this conversation. I'm State Senator Vincent Hughes, from the 7th Senatorial District, which is portions of Philadelphia and Montgomery County. Also serve as the Democratic Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. It is always good to be in the great northeastern part of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where I have lots of friends and folks that we work with on a number of different issues over the years. This is a very important conversation. We cannot allow this to slip through our fingers quickly. I want to thank Chairman DeFrank for providing us a broad perspective on the things we need to be thinking about, and I'm prepared to work with all of my colleagues, both in the Senate and the House, to try to get good policy done here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
All right. Anyone on Zoom? Senator Muth, Senator Williams, Carney, any opening remarks? I just, again, appreciate your patience. I wanted to get Chairman DeFrank some opportunity to talk before you had to go. Senator Carney, I see you waving your hand.
I'm fine. I don't need to.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So with that, we'll move to the second panel, community impacts. First up, we'll have on Zoom from the National Resource Defense Council, Robert Ruth. Second will be County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, Frank Mazza, and Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, Holly Fischel. So with that, Robert, I'll open up with you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. All right. So thank you, Chair Miller, Senator Flynn, all legislators and staff in attendance for this opportunity. Obviously a timely subject given the cascade of announcements about data center projects and significant planned investments that we've heard in Pennsylvania this year. I think it's important to understand the facts, what's real, and how best to protect against spikes in your constituents' electric bills and spikes in pollution associated with any new electric generation or from existing fossil assets being inefficiently utilized. I'm going to build on some themes that you heard from Chair DeFrank, but briefly about myself. Name is Robert Ruth. I'm a senior attorney with NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council, founded in 1970, and I serve as the Pennsylvania state lead for our climate and energy department. And so Pennsylvania, just like the rest of the country, we are faced with unprecedented opportunities related to data centers, artificial intelligence or AI campuses, high-tech cloud computing, all of these new large loads that are characterized by their significant demands for electricity. And these facilities, they can spur economic growth, they can create jobs, they can have increased municipal tax revenue, they will be responsible for various infrastructure investments, but their rapid anticipated growth and really unique operational behaviors require specialized planning, not just to maintain grid reliability, but also to accurately forecast peak demand in the years ahead. So just to start, to be clear, NRDC is neither pro nor anti-data center. We care about avoiding outcomes that are harmful to consumers, to the grid, and to our climate. So one key principle that I hope everyone takes away from my testimony today: if a new large load does not bring its own new, clean, firm generation to power its operations, then the inherent results will be increased pollution, increased strain on the grid, and a financial blow to residential ratepayers. So already, consumers are facing increased utility costs driven in large part by projected data center build-out. The most recent capacity auction held by PJM in July, that would be for the 2026-27 delivery year, it cleared at a historically high price, which broke the record that was set by the previous auction held in July of 2024. And those effects just started hitting Pennsylvanians this June. So that July 2025 auction, it had a clearing price of $329 per megawatt day. That was at the cleared at the newly lowered price cap that was negotiated by Governor Shapiro earlier this year. It's worth noting that that settlement agreement that the Shapiro administration reached with PJM helped mitigate the severity of the price impacts. PJM released its auction report after it announced its results, and it found that costs would have soared $2.9 billion higher absent the new cap. And again, that will only be in place through the next capacity auction, which is scheduled for December. This was a temporary agreement that FERC approved, and it was designed to buy time to fix these structural underlying issues with PJM's interconnection queue, its capacity market design, and its forecasted increase in large loads. So the growing electricity supply-demand imbalance in the region is really highlighted by the interest in data centers. One critical change between PJM's capacity auctions last year and then this July, there was over 5,400 megawatts of increased demand forecast, of which 4,800 megawatts, so nearly 90%, were traceable to large loads. Those are primarily, although not exclusively, data centers. PJM's markets currently allow for electric utilities to have different practices for determining future demand, future load, and that can lead to over-procuring supply for double-counted data centers or for data centers that are just shopping around but may never be built. And there's a bar chart included in my written testimony that illustrates some of these changes. So accurate load forecasting is critical, and it's challenging. Forecasts for near and long-term demand growth at the national, regional, and utility territory specific level are made highly uncertain by speculative bids from prospective data center developers, really unpredictable market conditions for AI technologies that may affect their future uptake. And then, as you heard Chair DeFrank mention, there are these potential advancements in chip technology or model architectures, which could drastically reduce the energy requirements of AI over time. I included a link to an article in my testimony that that states that the uncertainty over data center demand means that we might be overestimating by a factor of 5 to 10 what is really going to be taking place over the next few years. And the variable nature of these load forecasts poses a great risk to all other customers. If actual demand falls short of projected forecasts, you could see infrastructure that is overbuilt, and that will strand other customers with those costs. On the other hand, if infrastructure is underbuilt and these large loads are brought online, that could create capacity shortfalls and threaten grid reliability. So even if we right-size the system, we will need deliberate, thoughtful, and proactive steps from regulators and legislative enactment of regulatory frameworks to make sure that the risks of costs being shifted from large load customers to other ratepayers are not don't materialize. And so earlier this year, NRDC submitted comments to the PUC following its en banc hearing, which you heard about. We provided a series of recommendations to increase demand certainty and align infrastructure investments with real demand. Our recommendations would require that new large load customers provide near and long-term guarantees that they are committed to siting in Pennsylvania with the capacity and energy requirements that they request. This would also serve to benefit large load customers by providing some certainty, some transparency in terms of costs, and some roadmaps for expanding their operations. And this is all included in my written testimony. I won't walk through it line by line, but these include, some of our recommendations include upfront financial and siting commitments, exit fees and resizing clauses, minimum load charges, and then requirements for load shedding and demand response. There are significant benefits to requiring large load customers maintaining flexibility and that they curtail their load with day-ahead notice. But in terms of participation in demand response programs for data centers and other industries with really high uptime, like microchip processing and battery manufacturing, their existing participation rates in DR programs is very low. Financial payments alone are not sufficient incentives. So requiring large load customers to respond to emergency load reduction events, that should be deemed necessary to maintain grid reliability and stability. And there is a critical role for PJM to play on this front. NRDC and our partners, we recently filed comments on some of PJM's proposals. You heard Chair DeFrank mention the critical issue FastPath. This will help address resource adequacy constraints currently being driven by data centers. So we submitted all these recommendations to the PUC. We also urge the Commission to direct utilities that adopt large load tariffs to propose a volumetric charge on new large load customers to contribute to universal service programs to support energy efficiency, demand response, and low-income payment programs such as LIHEAP here in the Commonwealth. And I want to be clear, the funds collected under any such system benefit charge must not supplant existing programming. They must supplement them. So lastly, I just want to highlight an example from neighboring Luzerne County. In June, Governor Shapiro announced Amazon plans to invest at least $20 billion to establish AI innovation campuses across the state. Salem Township in Luzerne, home to the 2,476 megawatt Susquehanna nuclear plant, was listed as one of the first 2 sites. This likely reflects the fact that Talon, the plant operator, announced it had entered into a PPA with Amazon to provide nearly 2 gigawatts of power for a data center campus by 2032. This agreement gives the appearance that Amazon will be powering its data center with zero emissions electricity, and technically it will be, but the net result would be an increase in emissions of carbon on our grid and increased pollution like NOx in the communities near gas plants that would come online to meet demand that was previously met by Susquehanna. And it's understandable that nuclear power plant owners who are likely fed up with volatile energy and capacity markets in PJM would be looking for some long-term revenue certainty, like with a PPA signed with a data center company. But it's difficult to see how we can meet our climate targets if we cannibalize existing zero emission resources. So NRDC, in the context of hydrogen production, we have long advocated for the 3 pillars to make sure that hydrogen actually serves as a clean energy solution. One of those 3 pillars is additionality, simply meaning that if we're going to power a new large load with zero emissions electricity, whether that's a hydrogen electrolyzer or a data center, it must be powered by a resource that is additional, not an existing resource. Otherwise, that new demand is in fact directly responsible for increasing emissions from the broader grid, because removing an existing nuclear or renewable energy plant from the grid supply immediately results in those megawatt hours being backfilled by gas plants, at least for the near and the medium term. So I just want to highlight a contrast between the Talon Amazon arrangement and what was announced last year with respect to Microsoft and Constellation to restart Unit 1 at 3 Mile Island, now known as the Crane Clean Energy Center, to meet Microsoft demand from its new data centers in PJM. Unit 1 for 3 Mile Island had been closed since 2019 because it was no longer economic. So that arrangement would result in new low carbon electricity coming online. So from a climate, consumer, and grid impact perspective, that arrangement will result in a better outcome than the alternative, data centers being powered by polluting gas plants. So I'm almost at 10 minutes here. I'll just conclude by saying that we do have a precarious electricity supply situation in PJM. If it's not managed carefully, it could cost consumers tens of billions of dollars, and at a certain point risk life-threatening winter power outages. We know that data center build-out is a leading cause of rising electricity prices, and it could potentially increase the array of tools available to address the issue. So NRDC looks forward to working with the General Assembly. I appreciated hearing about the introduction of House Bill 1834, for example, as well as working with other relevant stakeholders in the months ahead, because we need to establish a diligent regulatory framework for large loads and for data centers that can do multiple things all at once: lower consumer bills, reduce climate pollution, and grow and protect energy jobs. So thank you. I know I probably went over time. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Robert, and please stay on. We may have some couple other questions. We've got 2 more testifiers on this panel. Holly Official with the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. Holly.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Chairman Miller and Senator Flynn, for inviting PSATs to be part of this hearing today and to present remarks on behalf of our 1,453, our association. PSATs is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization committed to preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Pennsylvania is blessed with an abundance of natural resources and a diverse landscape covering urban, suburban, and rural communities. Our state has resources and talent to be an economic and energy powerhouse, and we agree that it should be. When the state succeeds, our local communities succeed. Local governments play a critical role in the planning and development of their municipalities as the elected officials closest to the people they represent and are uniquely positioned to oversee this process. Local government's role in land use decisions is meant to balance the wishes of residents with the wants of developers and to do it with an eye on safety and affordability. It is not a responsibility our members take lightly and is heavily governed by the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. If a municipality has zoning, they must plan for every use and follow timelines for plan approvals. Due to the recent explosive development in artificial intelligence, data centers have become a fast emerging land use, and township governments are at the forefront of this discussion. To prepare for this new industry, township officials have rolled up their sleeves and are updating land use ordinances with the input of their residents to determine the most appropriate locations for these facilities and to mitigate the negative impacts. Municipalities can plan for data centers, but like any allowable use, cannot stop them or keep them out. The MPC gives municipalities the authority to plan for growth in their communities through a comprehensive plan. The plan is enforced through zoning and subdivision and land development ordinances. Zoning directs where different uses may be placed within a municipality, while SALDOS provides standards for the infrastructure that will support development. If a municipality chooses not to zone, it cannot restrict where a particular use may be placed. Zoning does have to be comprehensive, and you can't do changes to a specific site to acquiesce to a developer's desires because it can generally be considered to be spot zoning. Municipalities must follow a strict public process when adopting new ordinances or amending existing ones, including legal notices, public hearings, and consideration and action at advertised public meetings with ample opportunity for public input. In addition, land use approval processes are strictly regulated by state law, and failure to follow and act within timeframes can result in deemed approvals. Faster isn't better if rights are trampled. To be clear, PSATS opposes any effort to preempt local control of land use decisions, as the retention of municipal control of planning, zoning, subdivision, and other land use decisions is critical to townships' ability to manage growth. Local governments must continue to be allowed to set common sense rules that vary by community and deal with things like setbacks, noise, light pollution, and reasonable height requirements. Township officials spend a lot of time thoughtfully planning for development and crafting ordinances that balance development with community needs. For townships expecting the first data centers in Pennsylvania, both elected and appointed officials have been aggressively working to learn more about the impacts of these facilities and experiences in other states. While promising a windfall in new property tax revenues, positives need to be balanced with mitigation of the impacts on the residents who live down the street and share a well with the facility or the fire department who will respond to an emergency. Some may question these requirements, but they are rooted in careful examination of the issues. Height limits ensure that volunteer fire department's equipment can access the roof in the case of an emergency response or fire. Noise restrictions and setbacks correspond with closest residential buildings and ensure quality of life for residents from data centers that will be operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. One of the largest impacts of data centers, as we've discussed, is water use, which without thoughtful planning could have devastating impacts on existing residents and businesses. Depending on its size, a single data center could use up 1 million to 5 million gallons of water a day. Water is limited and a vital resource, so residents have valid concerns about water usage. Townships must ensure that the developer has documented an adequate water supply that will not leave residents unable to use their homes and businesses if water supplies go dry and require the township to truck in water for daily use. Finally, the electricity needs of each data center may exceed that for the entire metropolitan region or even county. While generally outside the purview of the municipality, proper planning ensures that the developer has worked with electricity suppliers and utilities to provide for their needs, as well as that for the generators that will supply backup power for these facilities. This demand will, in the short term, lead to higher consumer electricity costs until grid capacity is increased. PSAT supports efforts to streamline permitting at the state level, as our members experience have firsthand experience with cumbersome state permitting processes. However, streamlining permitting processes should not amount to waivers that could cost the necessary oversight to protect our residents and environment. In closing, data centers have a place in our Commonwealth. However, like any land use, we should not rush their development for the sake of a headline or news hit. These projects will have long-lasting impacts on the communities that host them, which is why it is critical to preserve local decision-making and avoid a one-size-fits-all defined schemes. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Frank?
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Thank you, Senator Flynn, members of the committee, and certainly members of the House who are able to join us here today. I would like to say that certainly counties echo much of what Ms. Fischel has already said. Came here prepared today to discuss, the concerns that county governments have in our role is certainly, I think, the largest, landmass-wise government entity of all of our local governments, covering all 67 counties, 13 million Pennsylvanians, and the 13 million Pennsylvanians that we represent, our members represent, that are your mutual constituents. This is a topic that has been very much at the forefront of my county commissioners' minds. It's certainly a topic of conversation because they're hearing it out in the public every day. Local governments are the boots on the ground. They're the closest thing to our citizens from a government perspective. They're the folks who are, out at the supermarket, shopping every day, hearing about, what's going on in, Township X or Borough Y related to, this project or that project. So, we very much, as counties, have taken a significant interest in the conversation around AI data centers and the implications for local governments and local control. And with that, I have several remarks here that submitted earlier, so I'll try to pare down what I have for the sake of conciseness. And really just want to start by saying that this is a conversation that we hope to continue to have with the General Assembly, both the Senate, the House, the Shapiro administration, our local government stakeholders, industry partners, and our community stakeholders. For counties, we recognize that there's tremendous opportunities here with AI data centers, economically and otherwise. But at the same time, we understand that there's physical needs, physical infrastructure that has to be developed and built, but that at the end of the day, we need to continue to preserve the integrity of our communities and the role that local governments have, as Holly already noted, in the zoning and planning aspects of what we do. Because for counties, through the county planning departments, they play a critical role in coordinating development across their communities, through assisting municipalities with technical planning, land development, and the implementation of the municipal planning code, as we've already heard about. Counties, and I want to emphasize this, we are not taking a position or good, bad, right, wrong, or otherwise. We are simply here, and what I think our role in conversations going forward will be, is to encourage the General Assembly, Governor Shapiro, this administration, future administrations, to recognize the role that counties have in land use planning, the limited zoning authority that counties have, I will note, in balancing the environmental, infrastructure, public health and safety, economic development, and energy needs of our communities and our Commonwealth. Here in Pennsylvania, land use planning, as was already noted, is governed by the Municipal Planning Code. Pennsylvania has a tradition that places significant emphasis on land use controls at the municipal level, and the role that counties play in this responsibility is the development of what's called the County Comprehensive Plan. These plans are guidance documents. They do not have the force of law through ordinance or otherwise that our townships have through their zoning responsibilities. But they are guiding documents that advise county and municipal governing bodies. They provide useful reference to the local municipalities and promote general consistency amongst all of the local plans because, as as the municipal code, planning code stipulates, local governments outside of the counties are also able to have comprehensive plans on the books, although counties are required to have them. And lastly, they offer direction for land use patterns that go beyond, of course, the municipal boundaries across counties, neighboring municipalities and the like. Noting that these comprehensive plans, they are required by counties to have them in place, and they are required to be updated every 10 years. And there's a number of stipulations in the planning code that they're required to identify. I've included them in my testimony, so I won't read them off one by one here. But those items, those points of emphasis are what our county planning commissions and planning offices use to prepare advisory guidelines that promote consistency with the county plan. These guidelines also foster uniformity in zoning terminology, common types of land use regulation. Again, it's not a controlling document. It doesn't have the same force as local municipal zoning ordinance would, but it does carry the weight of consistency across all of our municipalities and the issues that are important to from a regional basis, from a local basis. One other point of emphasis that we are, as counties, all have planning agencies. We are, also as part of a planning process, required to comment on, review local municipal plans, zoning and subdivision ordinances, proposals for land development, and that also includes subdivision plats and plans. So, for counties, I think the key takeaway is that if we were to have state legislation that were to, essentially supersede, weaken local control of our planning efforts, of our zoning efforts, it really would undermine the ability of counties and municipalities to anticipate, evaluate, and respond to the unique impacts that data centers are offering. We must be able to, as local governments, retain the ability to manage land use in ways that reflect the values and priorities of our communities. These county plans exist to protect the public interest in infrastructure, and data centers would have impacts that need careful consideration. And as we've heard already, there are stormwater control considerations, energy use, light, sight, and sound. Local governments, from counties down to the townships and boroughs, must do due diligence in assessing these impacts, regulating zoning, and development accordingly. And while zoning codes and permitting processes certainly need to be reviewed and updated to facilitate development, local governments must work collaboratively with industry partners, community stakeholders, and the like to achieve the best outcomes for residents. And so, for one other point of emphasis too, I want to note is that not only from the planning and zoning perspective, counties also want to be mindful of the physical safety and emergency response considerations of these data centers. These facilities house significant amounts of information and technology. They could be targets for both physical security risks and cybersecurity risks. And while security itself is not under county control, counties often play a role in the emergency response for these large-scale events. So we certainly want to be mindful of that as we certainly continue the dialogue around data centers. And I'll end with this. Counties agree and certainly understand that data centers are going to be an integral part of the fabric of our technological world, and we certainly want to be mindful and welcoming of the advancements that these technologies and the world that we live in today will have to offer, especially as it relates to our economic development and our economic development drivers for this Commonwealth. But again, to I think piggyback off of Ms. Fischel's main point, that for counties, the important point to emphasize is that we must maintain that local government interests and the interests of our communities must remain at the forefront of all these conversations. So with that, I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here today. We look forward as an association, as our county governments, to continuing the dialogue with our legislators, both in Harrisburg and beyond, to ensure that we are doing this the right way, and that our local governments continue to play a key role in ensuring that our community fabrics, our communities, and the residents that we all serve are served well by the development that is, I shouldn't even say coming, is already here. So with that, I appreciate this opportunity and happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you, Frank. Senator Flynn to open us up with questions.
Thank you for your testimony, guys. This question is, I think, specifically for you. I'm sure you guys have seen the co-sponsorship memo and now the language on Senate Bill 939. Currently, as we sit, per law, county and municipal government has oversight over any permitting process in the Commonwealth. And you know, as you get these co-sponsorship memos, you see the same one that I see, Pennsylvania fast-track permitting, job creation and opportunity, economic opportunity zone, looks great until you see the language, right? So how does any of your organizations feel about the current language in that bill and how that will proceed in the market in Pennsylvania if that's passed or run?
So speaking directly to Senate Bill 939, the provisions, and I don't have the exact section committed to memory off the top of my head, but the provisions related to the local government responsibilities under it have given us some pause, we'll say, and have given us some concerns, and we certainly have expressed that to the bill's sponsor. And I think the big thing is that we understand that this is going to be a moving needle. Certainly a lot of stakeholders are going to want to weigh in on this legislation, if that's the legislation that ultimately is what is used to move the needle on this. But those provisions, I think, are concerning to us, as it certainly could be seen and interpreted as preemption of local government authority by effectively restricting our abilities to be flexible when it comes to our zoning and our regulations that we have in place on a local basis. And I'll turn it over to Holly. I'm sure she has some thoughts on this as well.
I echo very similar concerns, specifically with it's Section 302 in the bill, where it talks about the municipal review processes and restrictions on zoning ordinances. And that particularly, we oppose that section of the language because we think it's overly restrictive and it does look like a preemption. These facilities are not like every other, I think it compared them to light industrial uses, and that's they're not really comparable. They are different and need to be treated properly to address the different, mitigate the different factors with those, the impacts. We also have concerns with the time frame limitations, where a conditional use would have to be done, I think it's 120 days, and that's just not, it would not be enough time, and it conflicts with timeframes in the municipality's planning code. So that's also a large issue of concern.
Senator Malone, question?
I just want to thank you for your answer there. I'm offering an amendment to the bill to put back in city municipal government to have that right of refusal by their council to have these data centers or not. So I just want, and if that amendment's not passed, I would never vote for this bill. So just so everybody out there knows.
Thank you for the clarification, Senator Flynn. Senator Malone?
Yeah, this is just for more public. On the county 10-year plans, are there regular monthly, quarterly reports of how well the county's overall is matching or meeting its plan?
I don't know, Senator, that there are regular I guess for lack of a better term, check-ins on progress and how things are coordinating. I know our planning departments at the county level across the state, and obviously every county is different. If you've seen one county, you've seen one county in Pennsylvania. But I know our planning departments across the state take great strides to ensure coordination and collaboration with their local government partners. I could tell you that I have seen, on the topic of data centers, a number of counties, I can't speak for all of them that may have done this, but several examples that I've seen already who have put out guiding documents, white papers on best practices that they believe would best align with their particular county's comprehensive plan, so that as municipalities are looking at their ordinances, they're developing their ordinances, they could look to that county document, not as they have to do it this way, but if you're going to want to line up with the county plan, this is how you would do it. So I think those collaborations are there. They're always happening. Not everywhere, but I certainly think they are. And I know that from the county level, our planning departments are doing everything they can to ensure that the local governments are coordinating as best they could.
All right, thank you.
Representative Haddock.
Yeah, just a follow-up comment to Senator Flynn's amendment that he put in. I was glad to see the senator try to correct that problem. If it's unsuccessful, I'm going to tell you it will be offered in the House, because at 10 o'clock at night, a dear friend of mine called me. It just happens to be a supervisor, and his father's on the zoning board, and the two of them were on a call with me yelling about that provision. And as a former mayor, sometimes, but if there's a stopgap, if Senator Flynn's amendment doesn't get through, we plan to do it in the House.
Thank you, Representative Kazarowski. Excuse me. Got it.
Is Robert still with us, or did he go offline?
He's still on.
Is he here with us? Because I just wanted to ask him specifically. He had talked about the principle, key principle here to initialize, and it was that if new large load does not bring its own new clean, firm generation to power its operations, the inherent result will be increased pollution, increased strain on the grid, and financial blow to residential rate payers. So just give me an example of what does that mean? Is that the water generation to be responsible with that? Is that lessening usage at peak times? Is that the generator? Just if you could just kind of clarify that a little bit for me.
Of course, Representative. Thank you for asking. So specifically, I was talking about the electricity supply to power the data center, and the effects that would happen if you were to power a new large load simply by taking an existing electric generator off of the grid, or to have it be serving a particular large load and no longer the regional grid or to residential customers. So my testimony focused exclusively on grid impacts, consumer impacts. There are others within NRDC who can speak to some of the water usage issues. And I know that there's, there's an article I can send you about an initiative from Google about how to recycle wastewater in their data centers. But my testimony, that was, and that principle that I want everyone to walk away from this with is, if you are willing to, if a utility is going to allow a large load like a data center to interconnect, it is in everyone's best interest, including the data center itself, to have its own new clean electric supply brought alongside with it.
Okay, thank you very much for clarifying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you for the question.
Representative.
Thank you very much for your testimony. This is exciting. This is new. This is going to be something incredible. I think everyone is excited about that. But it's complicated. It's very complicated. As we listen to the testifiers, I give them a great deal of credit. But I need a new dictionary. I have to get out my phone and ask some questions to my phone. What I'm leading up to is I'm looking for balance. Okay. We have new technology. We want to improve the lives of our American citizens, but it also has to be affordable. And it's indication that these facilities may cause harm to our regular customers. may not have the energy that they need because of the consumption of these large facilities. Because this is so complicated, Frank, you touched on this, guiding principles. I'd like to see all those professionals that are the experts in this field to put forward a potential plan for each particular county based upon the county's needs, based upon the dangers involved, the positives and negatives, and make it so that it's simplified enough so all of us can understand it. There's no way that we as regular consumers, we don't think about what the gas company does. We get our bill, we pay our bill, we turn up our thermometer, we reduce our thermometer. When we can't afford it, we wear sweaters and reduce that thermometer, whatever. And right now, what I'm concerned about is the cost of the energy has increased so dramatically. I made a call to the PUC in December of '23. I said, what happened? The heating bills went up 50%. It was amazing. Okay, it's a cold winter. They're still up. Okay, now, my point to you is, it appears that they could even be going up higher because of certain circumstances. So as a person who's honored to serve, and we have to find the balance between the investors, the companies, and the people that we represent, I'm looking for some solid suggestions, some solid examples that are understandable so that everyone can understand and we can do the right thing in the end. Okay? Now, nothing is perfect in life, but we need those examples. I'm asking you that from the standpoint of the former teacher that I was. I need that visual example. I need that auditory example because, again, this is very complicated, very complex, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you on all aspects of this thing, but I'm asking for that guidance. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. With that, that concludes our second panel. We'll now bring up our third panel, Effect on Utilities and the Grid. We have folks from Pennsylvania American Water, also the Energy Association of PA, and PPL Electric Utilities as well. Shelby, do you want to kick us off?
Sorry. Good afternoon, Chairman Miller, Senator Flynn, and members of the Senate Democratic Policy Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of PPL Electric Utilities on the emergence of data centers in Pennsylvania. My name is Shelby Linton-Ketty, and I serve as Senior Director of Public and External Affairs for PPL Electric Utilities. PPL Electric serves 1.5 million customers in 29 counties in central and eastern Pennsylvania. PPL Electric owns and maintains 50,000 miles of regulated transmission and distribution lines, infrastructure that's vital to the economic vitality of the Commonwealth and the communities that we serve. We applaud the committee for taking the time to discuss data center development in the Commonwealth and the state's role in ensuring a secure, affordable, and sustainable electricity supply while accommodating an acceleration of electricity demand and load growth that we have not seen in decades. PPL Electric has a total of 14.4 gigawatts of data center load in advanced stages. This pipeline of projects exceeds our current peak load of 7.5 gigawatts. In practical terms, that means we're preparing to nearly triple our system demand in the next 10 years, growth that took over a century to reach. This surge in growth requires a modern, resilient power grid that's ready to meet the needs of Pennsylvanians today and for generations to come. Over the last decade, we have invested $13 billion in our grid and expect to invest another $7 billion through 2028. These investments in hardening and automation drive improved reliability and resiliency performance while preparing our region for this future growth. We are a leader in the use of grid-enhancing technology to improve the system while avoiding more costly upgrades where possible. For example, we have expanded transmission capacity using dynamic line rating technology, which saves customers millions of dollars per year and avoided congestion fees and traditional capital upgrades. And importantly, and Chairman DeFrank also highlighted this, all of the data center projects currently under agreement will be in front of the meter, which means that they will be connected to PPL Electric's transmission system. This means that any benefits from this increased load will flow to all PPL Electric's 1.5 million customers in the form of improved reliability and affordability. And we have contract provisions in place to ensure that the costs of any upgrades necessary to interconnect a large load customer do not become stranded costs. As these large load customers pay for their share of the system, transmission costs for other customers will be reduced. We estimate that the first 1 gigawatt of load, paired with an average $100 million of system upgrades, will result in a 10% reduction in the transmission component of the bill for our average residential customer. Additional load will then bring added cost reduction benefits. Even with our significant infrastructure investments, the increased demand for electricity at current forecasts will require the need to site new transmission lines, and in some cases, will also require the construction of additional substations. Where possible, PPL Electric aims to leverage brownfield rights-of-way or rights-of-way along highway corridors and seeks to have positive relationships with landowners. We have successfully answered questions and educated customers, counties, and legislators on project need and impact through open houses and communities where a new or expanded transmission line is proposed. This level of community engagement has been our practice for decades and will not change with the level of activity that we expect going forward. Our 1,400 employees live, work, and volunteer in our communities. It's important to us to minimize the impact of our work as much as possible and to be a good corporate citizen. As facilities require massive amount of reliable electricity, data center siting is heavily influenced by power grid considerations. Not surprisingly, data center operators are prioritizing locations with access to reliable power sources. Data centers need reliable power to ensure continuous operation, which can be a significant factor in site selection. As we know, it's not just data centers that need reliable electricity. Every single person in this room uses and relies on electricity every single day. Due to a convergence of factors, including the retirement of baseload dispatchable generation, the introduction of significant amounts of intermittent resources, and unprecedented load growth from data centers and electrification, the Commonwealth is at serious risk of lacking the adequate electric generation supply to meet future demand. While PPL Electric cannot control the supply of electricity or increasing costs to our customers, we have an obligation to serve our customers and are deeply concerned about the trends we're seeing and which are being forecast by PJM and NERC in terms of supply and reliability. To meet the challenges of unprecedented load growth and limited generation, we need an all-of-the-above approach, which includes maximizing the efficiency of the transmission grid and supporting initiatives like Senate Bill 897 that would increase the state's role in ensuring resource adequacy by allowing electric distribution companies to invest in generation as a backstop to help address resource inadequacies when the market either cannot or will not be able to meet projected demand. In conclusion, Pennsylvania has historically been a leader in energy space and is experiencing a unique economic opportunity. To continue playing a leading role, the Commonwealth must be proactive now by modernizing its energy policy and developing solutions that balance the impact of data centers while also addressing today's challenges and maximizing potential opportunities. Discussions like today are a fantastic first step. Thank you for the chance to provide this testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions when it's time.
Thank you. Tony.
Thank you. Chairman Miller, Senator Flynn, and the distinguished members of the Senate Democratic Policy Committee for holding this important hearing today. My name is Tony Nakovich. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for Pennsylvania American Water. For more than 135 years, we have provided water services across Pennsylvania and currently serve 2.3 million Pennsylvanians in more than 400 communities in 38 counties. We are proud to serve as the Commonwealth's largest water and wastewater utility, and we value our relationship with the General Assembly and are grateful for the invitation to provide our perspective on the emergence of data centers across the Commonwealth, but particularly here in the Northeast Pennsylvania. We recognize the economic and technological importance of data centers in today's digital world. As the Commonwealth's largest water utility provider, we stand ready to support the growth and are committed to enhancing the economic leadership of Pennsylvania by attracting and bringing data centers online with reliable water service. We are familiar with the operational challenges data center water demands present, particularly in terms of seasonal water demand fluctuations, distribution system impacts, and water quality management. Pennsylvania American Water stands ready to work with data centers to ensure that providing them with the service that they need does not adversely impact our customers. I want to say that again, does not adversely impact our customers. Pennsylvania American Water also encourages open dialogue between water and electric utilities, interstate water commissions, local communities impacted by data centers. This communication will lead to sound policy that considers the need and concerns of all that are impacted by data center creation. The communications should begin in the development stage, go through construction, and continue through operations. There are three main topics that I'm going to discuss today: the seasonal water demand fluctuations, distribution system impacts, and water quality management. I will start with data center water consumption and how it relates to our seasonal water demands. Data center water demand can vary significantly depending on the approach they need for cooling their systems. But many data centers depend on water and require substantial amounts of it to cool their servers and other equipment. In the past, cooling was primarily completed through consumed water that was called evaporative cooling. Technology is rapidly changing, and that is becoming a thing of the past. Now they're moving to more use of the water rather than consumption of the water for their cooling. Water cooling is favored because it is very heat efficient dissipation and is an effective way to cool the data centers. Data centers may also use air cooling or hybrid cooling, which requires substantially less water. Data centers that use water cooling require water year-round, but they need even more water in the summer months. The summer is when we experience our peak demands for residential and non-residential customers. People fill their swimming pools, they water their yards, their gardens, and even their children play in their sprinklers. Data centers will further increase our summer peaks, requiring water providers like Pennsylvania American Water to construct facilities to satisfy these peaks. To provide perspective on the water data centers may use in the summer months, an average-sized water-cooled data center can use up to 3 million gallons of water in July. That may only be for a few days, maybe 10 at max. That same data center may only use 800 gallons of water during the winter months in January. This makes for a real large discrepancy between the water usage. When we look at what the average usage is over a year, it may only be 100,000 gallons a day on average. Very significant variation in the water use pattern. These extreme demand swings present potential challenges to system design and operation, but the right regulatory construct and deal structure enables water utilities like Pennsylvania American Water to support the development of this important industry. Water-cooled data centers also impact our water distribution systems. The large amount of water needed to cool data centers can exert stress on our water distribution infrastructure. Pennsylvania American Water is well positioned to manage this stress because we invest approximately $700 million in infrastructure upgrades on an annual basis across the Commonwealth. Our infrastructure and systems are prepared to manage the consumption, but other water utilities may not be able to provide the same reliability. That is why it is important to place data centers in areas where dependable water service is available. Additionally, infrastructure investment to serve data centers can also improve service to other customers. These investments may include increasing main sizes, improving pumping or storage capacity, and even PFAS mitigation that benefits all customers. Pennsylvania American Water strives to be a solution provider by collaborating with developers of data centers to ensure the proper infrastructure upgrades are performed. Data centers should pay the costs associated with this development and infrastructure upgrades necessary to serve them, so our customers do not foot the bill for the investments that they do not benefit from. We want to be a cooperative partner when it comes to development of data centers, but balance and fairness to our existing customers must also be considered. Lastly, infrastructure to serve water-cooled data centers must be managed to ensure it does not adversely impact water quality. At Pennsylvania American Water, we prioritize ensuring water quality standards are met and maintained for the delivery of the high volume flow of data centers. The significant demand required by water-cooled data centers can require large transmission mains and storage tanks. Water could become stagnant in those larger pipes and storage tanks during cooler months of the year when usage from the data centers is low, which could lead to low chlorine residual issues. Furthermore, sudden high demand events may reduce pressure in the system, impacting existing customers. Pennsylvania American Water has addressed these challenges in the past, and we can collaborate with data centers to mitigate these risks as part of the planning process. In conclusion, data centers provide substantial economic and technological benefits in an era where AI is growing fast. The water demand for data centers presents a complex but solvable challenge for water utility. These challenges are particularly relevant in managing seasonal demand spikes, maintaining system reliability, and safeguarding water quality. As the General Assembly looks at policy measures to streamline the growth of data centers, it would be beneficial to consider water demand forecasting, infrastructure cost sharing, capacity agreements, alternative water sourcing mandates, and operational resilience and demand management requirements. We are willing and encourage the General Assembly to work with us and other stakeholders to develop an impactful strategy to assist with the growth of data centers in the Commonwealth. These measures, coupled with regulatory oversight, will ensure customers of Pennsylvania American Water will continue to receive clean, safe, reliable, and affordable water and wastewater services. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Nicole Luciano from the Energy Association of PA joining us on Zoom. Nicole?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Miller and members of the Senate Democratic Policy Committee. I'm Nicole Luciano, the Director of Policy for the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, or EAP. We're a trade association representing the electric and natural gas distribution utilities that operate across Pennsylvania. Thank you for this opportunity to address the critical intersection of data center development and Pennsylvania's energy future. Today, I'm going to address three interconnected challenges: the unprecedented scale of data center growth, the resulting strain on the electric grid, and the comprehensive policy solutions needed to capture these economic opportunities while ensuring reliable, affordable electricity for all Pennsylvanians. A lot of what I'll say here this afternoon is going to echo what PPL shared and also what Chairman DeFrank shared at the top of the hearing here. EAP wishes to commend the Public Utility Commission for initiating various hearings earlier this year to gather information on this issue from all stakeholders, including those here today, as well as engagement from the General Assembly like this hearing to take proactive steps to prepare the Commonwealth. Pennsylvania is experiencing extraordinary data center growth, as all the testifiers have reported here today. At the July 2025 Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit alone, $90 billion in data center and energy investments were pledged, with demand projected to double or triple by 2028. That's only 3 years from now. In PPL service territory alone, energy demand projections jumped from flat growth to a projection of over 70% growth by 2031. At the Commission's en banc hearing earlier this year, the electric distribution companies reported interconnection requests that would either add capacity equal to 30% of their current system peak load from a single facility, would increase overall peak demand by 40% from advanced projects alone, or in some cases, double entire system peak demand. These are not traditional industrial loads. Data centers operate 24/7 with minimal seasonal variation and require transmission scale capacity levels that fundamentally change how we plan and operate the electric grid. This creates a resource adequacy challenge. The unprecedented demand growth is occurring precisely when our wholesale energy markets are under stress, as demand is outpacing the rate at which new dispatchable generation is coming online. Recent PJM capacity auction results tell this story clearly. Capacity costs, which are what we pay power plant owners to make generation available when we need it, jumped from $2.2 billion to $16.1 billion over the past two auctions. That's a 632% increase that Pennsylvania families and businesses will ultimately pay in their electric bills. This dramatic price increase signals that our regional electric market is struggling to maintain adequate supply to meet current demand, let alone the projected growth from data centers and other economic development. Forecasted growth from data centers is part of a broader resource adequacy challenge facing Pennsylvania. Our state, like many others, is experiencing unprecedented electric demand growth from electrification and energy-intensive industries, while existing market structures struggle to ensure adequate supply. So EAP has identified seven critical areas requiring immediate attention to ensure our energy security. First, and we've recommended this to the Commission in its various proceedings, is that they should complete a focused assessment of resource adequacy to evaluate the current projected generation resources against short, medium, and long-term demand growth, including supporting transmission infrastructure, which I think the Chairman reported that they are actively doing. Second, we must enhance procurement options in Pennsylvania, including long-term contract flexibility to support affordable, reliable, and sustainable supply for Pennsylvania customers. Third, if adequate supply gaps are identified, the Utility Commission should have the authority to consider regulated utility investment in generation as a reliability backstop when competitive markets fail to deliver. Fourth, we should explore state policy options to retain existing baseload generation and facilitate new dispatchable generation development. Fifth, we need to modernize policies ensuring all users equitably share grid maintenance costs while streamlining permitting processes for critical infrastructure. Sixth, we should authorize policies supporting grid optimization and advanced technology deployment for better resource integration. And finally, we must explore enhanced energy efficiency and demand response programs. For data centers specifically, EAP recommends a balanced approach grounded in four main principles. First is accurate impact assessment. All regulatory frameworks must evaluate the actual system impacts of each data center project rather than relying on models designed for traditional industrial loads like manufacturing. There must be flexible implementation given the diverse characteristics of data center customers from AI facilities to cloud storage. Our approach must remain adaptable. We should leverage existing expertise. Rather than creating new bureaucratic layers that delay critical data center projects, we should build on established utility relationships and coordinate effectively with federal regulatory frameworks. And finally, we must maintain cost causation with system benefit recognition. Data center customers should pay for the incremental grid costs they create while receiving credit for legitimate system benefits they provide. This balanced approach protects ratepayers from inappropriate subsidization while maintaining fair treatment that supports economic development. Pennsylvania's electric utilities have the privilege and legal obligation to serve every customer. While they do not own generation, when the lights go out or prices spike, customers contact them, not regional grid operators or power plant owners. Many large load interconnection issues involve both state and federal jurisdiction. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, oversees transmission facilities and wholesale markets, while the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission regulates distribution level service. All stakeholders, state and federal policymakers, utilities, regulators, regional grid operators must work together to ensure coordinated approaches that recognize these overlapping jurisdictions. We appreciate this committee's engagement in the General Assembly's consideration of comprehensive solutions, including House Bill 1272 and Senate Bill 897, which could provide additional tools for managing large load growth while maintaining appropriate oversight and ratepayer protections. EAP remains committed to working with this committee, the Commission, and all stakeholders to ensure Pennsylvania captures the data center opportunity while maintaining the reliable, affordable energy our residents and our businesses deserve. Pennsylvania can continue to lead in both economic development and energy policy through comprehensive planning, balanced cost allocation, enhanced procurement flexibility, and coordinated action across all levels of government and industry. I'm happy to answer any questions about how we can successfully manage Pennsylvania's data future. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, and I'll kick us off with the questions. Tony, question on the capacity agreements that you mentioned for the water consumption. Have you seen any of those agreements actually get done within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? for data centers that are currently proposed?
We're working through some at the moment. They haven't come to fruition, but we're very close.
And is that a requirement in other states, or is that just something that's state by state, local negotiations for those agreements?
Local negotiations.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I'll open it to any other questions from my colleagues. Representative Madden?
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony. Tony, you said that, a couple of things. You said that you're going to need to construct new facilities to handle the amount of power that you're going to need the water for cooling. And you also said that you are going to make sure that, that it's balanced and it's fair and that we don't pass these costs on to customers. I'm a Pennsylvania American Water customer, and when I moved here 20 years ago, my water bill was like $72 to $75. Last month's was $245. I'm wondering how you're going to do that, because I know my constituents and myself, we can't pay another dollar for water, either coming in or going out. So I'd really like to know how you're going to go about constructing these facilities and handling this cooling that, power that the water needs without raising our rates.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The way we're going to do that is we're going to work with the data center developers to have them put the money in upfront to have those improvements completed. We would not be putting those on the backs of our customers. It would be part of the agreement that we would have with the developer itself, that if they want the water at a particular location, they would need to pay for those upgrades so that we could get the water to them. And in some cases, those improvements are actually going to provide benefits to our existing customers, but yet that's still going to be borne by the data center developer themselves.
Representative Brzezinski.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you all for your testimony again, trying to understand it all. Okay, and there were some alarming numbers that were just reported. For example, the resource adequacy challenge jumped from 2.2 billion to 16.1 billion over the past two auctions, 632% increase. Regular folks can't afford that. And I have a smile on my face, but it's out of concern. So, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. In healthcare, we use three words: affordable, accessible, and quality. But if it's not affordable, you don't have access, so therefore quality doesn't matter. In this case here, we're using the word affordable, reliable, and sustainable. And as Representative Madden just pointed out, the cost of our utilities have already dramatically gone up. So when you're starting to see a difference in some of these numbers, it's not 1%, it's huge percentages. And this is my concern. How in heaven's name can regular folks be able to pay for utilities, which again, I say is life and death? You don't have heat, you don't have water, you don't have electricity, your lives are in danger, okay? Just like the healthcare. So I'm asking once again that we have those examples, a projection, but an example that will give us the ability to understand completely what it's going to cost our consumers. We certainly want to support the new programs. We certainly want to support improvements in our lives, improvements in all this. But at what cost? What are the folks that we know, what are they going to be able to afford? And this is our concern as, again, legislators, because we owe our service to them, of, by, and for the people. So any of that information, I personally would respect receiving that. I know it will help me and my colleagues determine how to proceed. What's the best way? What are those examples? Give us those numbers. Thank you.
And then just to kind of follow up on that, if I'm allowed, if we give you any information, unfortunately, the information we can give you is backward looking, because where the increases come is from the generation cost, which Robert Ruth from NRDC kind of highlighted a little bit, as did Steve DeFrank. As far as distribution costs, as you may know, PPL has not been in for a distribution rate case for 10 years. So what you'll see when we give you this information is that your distribution rate has relatively been stable, but it's the generation piece that has greatly increased over the last year. So we can get you some information, but I just wanted to make sure everyone understood
And again, I
that.
appreciate that very much. This is a team approach. We're all here on the same page, just whatever we have to do to make it fair. Thank you.
Shelby, could you just touch on that PJM auction? That was I think it was like the second one ago that had the triple-digit increase. Kind of what was the driver in that increase?
Yeah, so Chairman DeFrank, I think, hit the nail on the head. It's the fact that demand is increasing at a rate that we haven't seen in a number of years, actually throughout our lifetime, and the supply that is coming in from the generators is not matching that pace. So, I mean, essentially, and this is one of the reasons why PPL is so supportive of Senate Bill 897, is because right now, the generation portion of the bill, as you know, is unregulated, which means we don't have any ability to regulate that price. But the other thing that distinguishes the market from regulated electric utilities is that they don't have an obligation to serve. So if you look at one of our sister companies, for example, in Kentucky, they are not in PJM and they are vertically integrated. So they are not having the same supply issues that we are having, because as supply is coming onto their system, they go to their state public service commission with a plan. So either gas, batteries, solar, or a mixture, and the state public service commission, helps determine what do you need. Here, because we gave up that opportunity, if the market, as it's doing right now, isn't showing up, and we as Pennsylvanians don't do something to get that power back, like literally, then we are without options other than sitting by, letting the prices go up, and possibly not having enough power.
Thank you very much. Representative, go ahead.
And I commend, one of the nicest things I heard today, or the best things I heard today, was when Pennsylvania American Water said that you were going to bill the data centers for the infrastructure that had to go out. I think that's one of the biggest fears out there with the consumer. And unfortunately, where we hear it more is the water part is the electric part. So this is over to Shelby. Shelby, you said they're building where there's power, but that's, at large sense, that might be right, but they're not building where there's some of these high transmission lines. And I know in Luzerne County, you just had a heated public meeting a few weeks ago, people worrying about their landscapes and these large transmission lines that have to be constructed. Is PPL passing those directly to the data centers that's requesting this? Because every data center I've met with said, oh, I only need this much line run, I only need this much line run. Who's footing that cost? Is it PPL? Is it the data center? Or is this possibly going to be pushed back on our Pennsylvania consumers?
I think the easy answer is to say it depends on a case-by-case basis, but what I can tell you is we do an analysis of what costs are directly caused by that data center, and that is the portion of the project that the data center pays for. And then those other costs, like when you upgrade a transmission line, it's upgrading the reliability for everyone in the service area. So we do typically allocate a portion of projects to all customers. And I want to be first to let you know, I mean, the way we've been doing this in cost allocation is the same that we have been doing for over 100 years. So I mean, if you have like a manufacturing plant, we would do the same thing. Now certainly the size of these projects are much different, but the process as far as allocating those direct costs directly to that customer, whereas some of the general costs to the overall rate base is what we do in every other situation.
But the consumer doesn't want to pay for a data center that's going to make millions. And I don't care that they make millions. Great. But the cost of doing business should be put on them, not on the consumers of Pennsylvania. If we have to regulate that through legislation, I'm certainly willing to take that challenge up. I guess I'm going to ask Tony over at Pennsylvania American Water, are you thinking if you have to run a water line direct, because I know in my mayor days, if we were putting a gas line in and you wanted a gas line, our gas company said, you pay for it. The one person's asking, you pay to run the line, then other people get residual benefits. That's kind of the way we operate. So from what I heard, I think you were taking a different approach where you would put it all on them, or is there going to be shared cost to the consumer?
No, there's no shared cost with the consumer. We develop what the cost is to be able to provide the water to the facility, and we then put that forth to the developer, and that's what we're expecting for them to
And see, I
put
thank
in
you.
up front.
Again, in interest of time, thank you. But I think PPL ought to start thinking, and if we have to regulate it, we will, or I will try. This should not be borne by the customers. The regular consumer should not pay for these high use. And the other question I have then in interest, I know myself in my business, I pay a higher rate for my electric on a business I own versus my residential. When there's such high volume, what kind of rate are they getting? Or is that from the generation part? So that's not your cost, correct?
I mean, correct, but I mean, for our portion, these customers are typically transmission customers, so that would be the portion that they would pay. But as I noted, as we get that large load interconnected on the system, that will depress everyone else's transmission rates because it's volumetric.
But their transmission costs, is there any benefit? I don't know your structure and your tariff program. Is your costs cheaper for a high volume user than a regular user, or is it straight across the board?
I think, subject to check, I mean, larger customers typically pay more transmission costs. So their transmission, I'm just making up a number.
Okay, no, that's fair.
It would be like thousands of
That was
dollars compared to
good
the
enough.
average
Thank you.
residential customer pays about $17.33.
Okay. And then my last question, as you heard, I took to the chairman, the power outages this past year in 2024 with PPL went from 30 to 74, and with this increased draw on the lines, we have to have a responsible, a reliable grid system. Are we okay with this extra usage to PPL?
Yes, so the outages that you're referring to are distribution outages, and I can tell you that since 2023, we have seen storms increasing both in severity and frequency, and specifically in 2024, we had the highest number of storms on record. So if you look at where we are so far this year, you know, we have been trimming trees even more than we already were. We're replacing aging equipment. We're expanding the smart grid to decrease the number of customers affected by an outage, and we've stepped up our proactive inspection and maintenance, and that's already, hopefully, you all know,
I would
realize that this year,
imagine.
because, well, I can tell you, we have, our customers have experienced over 500,000 fewer interruptions compared to the same period in 2024, and outages related to trees so far this year have decreased by 11%. Now, to your overall question, does this load impact reliability? That's where resource adequacy comes into effect. So what we're talking about with these outages are distribution related, but again, we have severe concerns that the amount of generation that is showing up is not meeting pace with demand. So we do think reliability is going to be an issue, not because of the distribution and the trees and our infrastructure, but because there may not be enough electrons to deliver.
Yeah. Okay. And I will give one shout out, you know, when you do have an outage, I will say it, especially with the vegetation and storms, it's rather, as the state goes, because if I get one more letter from Duquesne Power and Light at the length of their outages, you guys are very quick at fixing the problem, so I do give you credit for that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Representative. That concludes our panel number 3. Being mindful of the time, it's already 5:56. We're going to start panel number 4, economic considerations. We've got Bob Durkin from the Scranton Chamber of Commerce, Mike McDermott from the Scranton Building Trades Council, and Margaret Durkin from the Pennsylvania Mid-Atlantic TechNet. And Margaret, you're up first.
Good evening, Chairman Miller and members of the committee. My name is Margaret Durkin, and I'm the Mid-Atlantic Executive Director for TechNet, a tech trade association. While I do represent the Mid-Atlantic, I am based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is my home state. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today on the issue of data centers in the Commonwealth and some of the positive economic benefits that the data centers can bring to a region. TechNet notes we will advocate for reduced regulatory burdens on data centers as well as protections for sensitive information to ensure that Pennsylvania remains competitive. Additionally, we always urge lawmakers to apply any requirements neutrally to all large electricity users. We have a broad membership, 103 members as of today, including major AI developers and hyperscalers, as well as other tech companies with diverse energy profiles. Today's comments reflect feedback that I've been made aware of. However, I will note that it doesn't reflect the position of all of our members, given the wide array and the large economic benefits to regions where they're located. I won't go into specifics as they are in my written comments, which I submitted today. However, the Data Center Coalition that I will speak on recently engaged PwC to examine economic contributions of U.S. data centers, of the U.S. data center industry at a national and state level in 2022 and 2023. Again, you can see the highlights from that report, which outlines the impacts at the national level as well as specifics for Pennsylvania. Regarding development in the Commonwealth, one of our members, Amazon Web Service, which was mentioned a couple times throughout this hearing, is already investing here. In June of this year, they announced a $20 billion investment to support their AI and cloud computing technology. Their investment will bring over 1,200 high-skilled jobs to the area, and from those high-skilled jobs, other employment will become available in the local construction fields, as well as other business in the data center supply chain. AWS is also partnering with Pennsylvania educational institutions and workforce agencies to develop training programs and prepare future job seekers in these fields. TechNet and our members are committed to working with regulators and lawmakers and want to ensure that Pennsylvania remains competitive. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to participate today, and I'm happy.
Thank you, Margaret. Mike McDermott, we'll kick it over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Start off by thanking Senators Miller and Flynn and the rest of the distinguished panel for allowing me to speak a little bit today. My name is Mike McDermott. I'm the president of Scranton Building Trades. I'm also the business manager of IBW Local 81, which is the electrical union. Scranton Building Trades represents 16 building and construction trades throughout Northeast Pennsylvania. Although my comments will focus on the Northeast, these really could be taken anywhere in the Commonwealth. The sheer impact of the construction of these data centers, it would be monumental. We're talking about generational projects that we have not seen in, well, frankly, ever in this area. These projects would have long-lasting rewards to our members and to our area for years and years to come. Each data center would employ thousands of workers during the construction phase. Construction of these large buildings usually lasts 18 to 24 months. We're talking 40 to 70 hours a week work per worker, so you could imagine the amount of money going through there, the income that the local workforce would see over this. This construction would last many, many years, create countless number of jobs. The data centers would utilize all of the construction trades, from operating engineers to roofers and everyone else in between. After the construction of these facilities, which create good skilled, high-paying jobs, there's jobs at these facilities that local tradesmen and residents generally will be employed as. These projects would allow our members to work locally instead of being forced to travel to areas that have booming economies and development. Data centers would require all the trades to increase their apprenticeship numbers, which would allow our children to stay home. You know, for many years we've been hearing the parents say our children have to leave our area to get high-paying jobs. These are family-sustaining wages with great benefits, especially top-notch health care. These apprenticeships are paid by the local unions. There's no state tax money at all, no taxpayer dollars. We provide all the money to pay for this training and these facilities. You know, as said several times, there's more than likely going to be additional power generation involved with the construction of these data facilities, which in turn would create thousands more jobs for our local workforce. The long-lasting effect on the local economy through increased tax revenues is, you know, it's unseen. I've seen in the paper Mr. Flynn say some areas where a tax may go from $40 to thousands of dollars on that same piece of land. This would, the amount of work would also stay in the community, which would increase the revenues for local businesses, increase local real estate. It would, you know, obviously I'm biased because of my position with the building trades, but this is something that could really, really change the future for all the construction trades and all our children. And obviously we're very excited about the opportunity for this to happen, and we're hoping that through the proper legislation that we could make this happen and get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Bob?
Well, good afternoon, Senator Miller, Senator Flynn, all the esteemed members of the General Assembly. Thank you for inviting me to talk today a little bit on the subject of data centers. Again, my name is Bob Durkin. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. The Greater Scranton Chamber has nearly 1,400 members and is the largest and longest-serving business association in northeastern Pennsylvania. There are a number of individuals, obviously, who've spoken here today, and so I'm not going to go back over and try to rehash much of what was said, although they pretty much said almost everything that's in my notes. So instead, what I want to do is looking at things from sort of a community perspective. Allow me an indulgence here, just to get a little bit of perspective and a little bit of history. The Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce, by its nature, and all chambers by their nature, represent a cross-section of our community. Business representatives, large and small, nonprofit, civic leaders, that's who makes up the various boards and organizations that support the chamber. In our case, because we're a particularly complicated and large chamber, we have over 220 individuals who serve on our various boards. I mention that because one of the most important things that is a part of this situation we're looking at right now is the need for community input and for individuals from a cross-section of our community to be able to provide input. We have that inherently within the Chamber of Commerce itself. I don't suggest that it should stop there. On the contrary, I think what we're seeing here right now is democracy at its best. It's the opportunity for the community not only to hear what's going on, but think about it. Much of what happened and what was already discussed here today are solutions. So bringing all these issues forward are really is an important part of this whole interconnected process. So let me, again, I wanted a little bit of history. Let's go back to the late 1940s. Northeastern Pennsylvania was experiencing the end of coal mining, largely the end of railroading as a major industry, and with the end of World War II, the abrupt ending of manufacturing that was brought to this area as a part of that war effort. So we really were staring at some really serious problems at the time, and potentially, more than recession, probably depression for our region. And it was with that, in that situation, that began this concept of what we call the Scranton Plan. And it was a gathering of individuals, business people, government leaders, labor leaders, clergy, again, just average citizens, all came together and put together a concept plan called the Scranton Plan. That plan was all about upskilling and providing economic opportunity for the citizens of Lackawanna County. And I hope you don't mind, I'm not just trying to do a commercial for the Chamber of Commerce here, but it does speak to the concept of what happens when you're at a nexus, when you're at an important point in history and the community comes together to address that challenge. So among the players or the organizations and the communities represented was everybody from Carbondale to Scranton to North Pocono and the Abingtons, Mid-Valley, Down Valley. All these folks came together to vet out planning on what to do. And some incredibly creative things came from that. I mentioned this at the last hearing, the Republican hearing on this one. The concept of spec buildings in the United States, which is a normal part of business these days, was absolutely brand new in the 1940s and 50s. And the Scranton plan through SLIPCO, our industrial building company, were among the first in the entire country to do this. Again, I mention it in this particular context. Could you imagine how frightening it must have been for business leaders and community leaders to go around and to sit around the table and say, well, let's build buildings, but we don't have anybody to put in those buildings yet, right? They were breaking new ground. It was a whole new concept. Well, look at what's happened in the intervening years. It's paid dividends. It's paid dividends not just in individual buildings, but 15 different business and industrial parks that have been constructed by the Chamber of SLIPCO in partnership with our local, state, and federal governments. That's what happens when everybody comes together and has these conversations. That's what's happening right now. Through community investments in industrial parks and capital funding, availability of capital, Scranton Plan had, through its more than 80-year period, had remarkable results. We've generated and developed relationships and business opportunities with global companies throughout Lackawanna County. Locally based legacy businesses have been nurtured and strengthened. New enterprises are seeded every day, laying the foundation for future growth. And again, it's all possible because of a united community vision. At the regional economy, as the regional economy has evolved, so did we, as a focus on the Scranton Plan. Adapting to ever-shifting circumstances, the plan identified and pursued new opportunities and aligned with regional strengths that provided the resulting businesses in consumer goods, logistics, healthcare, finance and back office operations, and advanced manufacturing. And these represent, at a recent recounting, over 50,000 jobs created in Lackawanna County. Again, this is when, through an 80-year history, not just in what happened in post-World War II, but through different points in history when things were changing. Again, for those of us of a certain age that remember when up and down this valley, every single community had needle trades and shoemaking manufacturers, often locally owned, small scale. And all that changed. And now we look around and we see the major headings of Amazon and Chewy and other major international companies that are located here. All that happened because we were ready as a community to make those changes, to look at what we needed to do, and provide the resources and provide the opportunity for those jobs to come to Lackawanna County. So today, of course, we find ourselves at another critical juncture. Emerging opportunities in technology, energy, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, bolstered by the dynamic worlds of social media and artificial intelligence, are converging with regional assets in the form of developable land and proximity to the power grid. Let's not fool ourselves. That's really what it comes down to, right? We have land and we have access to the power grid as it sits. That's what's pushing everything into Lackawanna County and northeastern Pennsylvania right now. That's okay. An opportunity right before us, we have to do what we can to take advantage of it. But let's also acknowledge that not just are we talking about the idea of data centers, looking at the benefits in the form of jobs, private investment, long-term return on the tax base, we also have to respect the views of our citizens as we go through this process. And further, we should have to consider the potential to spur additional regional economic development in complementary industries and businesses such as manufacturing, fabrication, and maintenance, which will support these facilities, as well as the benefits to service, retail, housing sectors, and opportunities to retain and attract workforce talent with the engagement of our secondary and higher educational institutions. This is a really cool opportunity, folks. It really is. And if we do it right, our economy is going to benefit, our tax base is going to benefit, our educational system is going to benefit. So whatever opportunities and challenges may lie ahead, I want you to know the Chamber remains steadfast in its mission to attract, sustain, and grow business, to attract, sustain, and grow jobs. And guided by the same principles that shaped that original Scranton plan, we'll continue to convene leaders, leverage community assets, and act boldly to drive economic growth and opportunity for all. The story of our region's always been one of resilience, innovation, and collaboration. With a continued partnership of business, government, labor, and community leaders, we're confident that our best days lie ahead.
Thank you. I'll open up for any final questions or closing remarks. Representative.
Thank you very much, Senator. McDermott, Durkin and Durkin sounds like a law firm in Lackawanna County. I just wanted to state that. Maybe this is more of a question for Mr. McDermott, but what you said really does make sense. Bob, we have land, we have the power grid, certainly the ability to create jobs, long-lasting jobs, which is most important. But we have to do this with balance. The former testifiers talked about the water and the energy and the community and the needs and the cautiousness with pause with our commissioners. And so just talk to me a little bit about, because what you say, the apprenticeships, the kids that would be able to create jobs to stay here in Lackawanna County and not have to travel so far away. And those are the good things about this. But again, I think the balance of how we do this thoughtfully, how we do this with process, and that's why these policy hearings are so important, because we get to have testimony from the experts to kind of guide us through this. So talk to me a little bit about as my grandfather was IBEW.
Yes, he was. His name is on our building.
Eddie Malloy, yes, it is.
Well, I mean, obviously, it seems like everything we do is for our children. That's just the way it goes. So having opportunities open up for our young men and women to learn a trade, a skill that they could utilize the rest of their lives. And like I said, it's family sustaining wages. It's very good benefits. With the expansion of these data centers and, as Bob had said, some future downstream businesses, as you may, our apprentice numbers would have to grow for that. We're already preparing to expand our training center up in Clark Summit. I know the other trades are all doing the same thing in expectation that we're going to get, at least a few of these nice data center campuses. And we realize this is a community effort, and we want this done responsibly. None of us are trying to, burn down people's houses and tear down all their trees and pollute their rivers just to get a job. That's not, that's been done in the past. There has been some, bad actors involved with construction during the years. I think those days are long behind us. Thank God for everybody. But I think if we do this the right way as a community, let the experts be the experts. I know I've spoken to quite a few people over this with different types of systems, whether it's water-cooled, closed-loop systems, air-cooled systems. They all have their pros and their cons. Closed loop, you fill it with water, that's it, it's done. So you don't have the usage. It's a little louder than the air-cooled, but then it's a little more expensive, but the air-cooled is louder. So there's all things, and I think every building, even if there was multiple buildings in one campus, I think they may all be a little different. But ultimately, I'm here to create jobs for our members and for our future members, and to keep our members and their children at home.
Thank you very much. Also, let the experts do their job. That also goes for the vaccines in the United States under the federal. I can't help myself as a nurse. That is very important as well. I have to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other final questions or closing remarks? Senator Malone.
Thanks. So I do have a question. You'd mentioned ramping up apprenticeship programs. In my own district outside of this industry, folks are struggling for recruitment and retention for engineers and HVAC, and obviously especially electrical engineers and HVAC, at least in the construction, are extremely important. And then you may have a lot smaller capacity needed for maintenance. So do we have programs or ideas or solutions in the works for that recruitment and retention.
Yeah,
And what help do you need?
Yeah,
for
we
those?
actually have about 27 school districts in our territory. We regularly set up job fairs, give the kids, let them see what we do. We have a training center that we take tours. We allow tours. We've had kids from Carbondale, Honesdale, Scranton. We recruit through the military. We have a helmets to hard hat program. We go to, some locals go to, they'll go to, the inner city kids and spread the word, spread the programs, let everyone know that it's there. We've had some battles in the past with some guidance counselors who want to steer everyone towards college, and let's be honest, college isn't for everybody. Apprenticeship is a great road to travel. You're going to school for 4 years to be an apprentice. When our kids graduate, they have the knowledge and the expertise. We're not putting them out on the streets without an education. You don't want your teachers, your doctors, your lawyers, they all go to school, so do our apprentices. And we're very proud of that, and we will continue to grow, and we use every form of social media, whatever it takes. We currently have commercials on Froggy and KRZ and millions of apps just to keep getting the applicants, and our applications are really up right now.
Thank you. And my other question might be more for the TechNet or Tech Choice, but I'm used to, and I've seen in public and in these reports, statements that these dentist centers will be different from the ones in West Virginia, which I'm used to those. You have a high construction, and then you have 50 to 60 people needed to maintain them years after the first 2 years of being built up. The data centers here, they say that there will be about 1,200 jobs regular. What do those consist of? How are those organized or partaking in the data center?
Thanks for the question. So the 1,200 you're referring to is specific to our member company, Amazon Web Services, who announced their $20 billion investment earlier this year. And according to them, those 1,200 jobs are related to directly to the data center and its operations. And then from there, several hundred jobs related to the supply chain.
There's a follow-up question. Where would those jobs be located?
I can't answer that. I would imagine around the area, but I can follow up with the member to see if they have any more specifics on that.
Okay, thank you very much. And to wrap us up, Senator Flynn for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone, for contributing today at today's hearing. It's great to be back at my alma mater, Marywood University. Yes, I graduated college next. What we've heard makes one thing clear. Data centers aren't a simple issue. They represent both opportunity and risk. So we've heard so far, and our job is to weigh both with care. The purpose of this hearing is not to take a side for or against data centers. It's just to make sure we have the full picture. Our job is to weigh these perspectives carefully and to find a path forward that allows Pennsylvania to capture the benefits of investment in digital infrastructure while protecting our communities, our natural resources, and our ratepayers. So I want to thank you again, and I look forward to continuing the dialogue and the input, especially from the public on this.
Thank you, Senator Flynn. And I want to thank again our host, Marywood University, our staff that organized all the logistics behind this, and the panelists that testified. Again, very complex issue that we want to take a balanced approach. A lot of community input that goes into this process we take as a General Assembly to listen and learn from our community members and industry experts, whether it's the environmental impact, the energy demands, but most importantly, moving with a sense of urgency so that we don't miss an opportunity, and or I want to make sure that our communities are protected from any impacts. So With that, I want to thank everybody again. This concludes our policy hearing for today. I will stick around if there's any members from the public that want to personal input. I'll stick around if you have any other thoughts. So thank you very much.